I feel sorry for your trans friends.
I don't have any trans friends. Anyways, here's how to tell if your LED sign is cheap.
Hello.
Goodbye. Anyways, if you want to start a business...
I am my boyfriend's first black girlfriend.
If you're black, then I'm the real Donald Trump himself. China, China. I know China very well. I know everybody in China.
Like, I'm a trans man and I'm gay and I have been...
Isn't that being straight, but just with extra steps? Anyways, watch me put it down like this. From the top, make it drop. Very simple. My favorite expression in English is the one that says, never bite the hand of the one that fingers you. Something like that. China, China, China. If the USA is great again, then why did someone invented a USB? Actually, this is our A-frame acrylic.
The first 3 things a female notices in a man.
Don't care. Anyways, here's how to tell if your LED sign is cheap.
Tony is that one friend who grew up on a diet of 9gag Reddit, probably Dave Chappelle specials, and dank memes. You'll get me to buy 3 cars, one for me, my dog, and my fish on a 200 credit score with these sales tactics alone. This transgender issue is actually very simple. It has been an organized, well-funded and strategic political and ideological campaign by those who have an agenda, and they have been very successful, remarkably so. To understand this, we need to look at what happened from 2010 onwards. So many veteran homosexual rights campaigners and gay men and lesbians in their 50s and 60s are fed up with the so-called LGBTQIA+ movement. Some are starting to see it as a hostile takeover of a homosexual rights movement by straight people. Worse still, many now think of it as among the most regressive social movements of the past century. The reason lies in the growth of that acronym, with the forced teaming up of diverse groups which have divergent and even opposing interests. 40 years ago, there was no acronym. There was a gay community, which implicitly covered both male and female homosexuals. Except lesbians rightly demanded some visibility, so that changed in the early 1980s to lesbian and gay. Then it became lesbian, gay and bisexual, LGB, in the middle of that decade when we discovered bisexuals too. And there we remained as LGB, happily and exclusively same-sex attracted. That is, until the T for trans came along around 15 years later. In the 1980s and 90s, there was no trans or transgender community. There were 2 very different groups, transvestites and transsexuals. The only thing they had in common was a need to be able to discreetly source ladies' clothes in men's sizes. Transvestites were overwhelmingly male and heterosexual and liked to wear women's clothes occasionally. They did not believe themselves to be women, nor did they want to physically transition. These transvestites outnumbered by 10 or 20 to 1 the far smaller group of transsexuals. Transsexuals at the time were mostly male, mostly homosexual, and suffered gender dysphoria so severe that they willingly underwent the pain and risks of sex change surgery. There were only vanishingly small numbers of biological women identifying as either transvestites or transsexuals at that time. The public knew little about transvestites apart from the occasional problem page letter, "Dear Deirdre, my husband has started wearing my best frock," or from anonymous newspaper articles, where they always seemed unusually keen to emphasize that wearing women's clothes did not mean they were homosexual. The public was generally more sympathetic to transsexuals than to both transvestites and homosexuals at that time. But at some point in the late 1990s, the transvestites and transsexuals merged into a new group, transgender people. The public mostly thinks that transgender people are the same as the old transsexuals. I mean gender dysphorics who have either already changed sex or at least intend to. But more than 95% of transgender people do not change sex. Most trans women are biological males who still have full adult male genitalia and have no wish to change that. Many are still sexually attracted to biological females like the straight men they are and always were. This is how we arrived at LGBT. This is how a collective identity for homosexuals came to include lots of straight men who wanted to be seen as anything but straight men. Then, it was only a short wait before the Q was added. Q for queer, the N-word for homosexuals. Perhaps trolling the homos wasn't the reason the Q was added to LGBT, but it felt like it to some of us. Certainly LGBTQ now included even more straights who didn't want to be seen as straight, because that's just too dull? In any case, yet another bunch of straights had muscled into our acronym, literally queered our pitch, without bothering to ask the boring, old-fashioned LGB whether it wanted to be forcibly teamed up with yet more non-homosexuals. Most LGB people just kept their mouths shut. Others, afraid of being left behind, started calling themselves non-binary. No one seemed to understand what it meant, apart perhaps from having a pink fringe and big glasses. Then came me for intersex. Neither a sex nor a gender, but a medical condition this time. Then it was R, for asexual. Boy George famously once said he would prefer a nice cup of tea and a sit-down to sex. Fair play. But that hardly warrants the launch of a human rights campaign. And so we arrived at LGBTQIA, which was then itself immediately overtaken by LGBTQIA+, with the plus sign signaling that there would be no limits to the expansion. If that's a bit confusing, just remember, the LGB is the homosexual bit, the TQIA+ is the straight bit. First our acronym was hijacked, and then our flag. In 2018, our beautiful simple rainbow flag was binned and replaced with the ugly Progress Pride flag, with added triangles signifying trans and non-binary people, plus people of color. Apparently a rainbow, the very definition of inclusion, is not inclusive enough for our queer new world. Next up for a takeover was the jewel in our community's crown, Stonewall. What was once a model lobby group has been hijacked and turned into, effectively, a consultancy firm for companies looking to put a tick in a corporate social responsibility box. We should have seen this corporatization coming years ago, when lesbian and gay pride was first de-gayed to just pride. But what can be done about all this? Is it time for a divorce? Well, according to the gaslighting narcissists of the TQIA+, we LGB people are nothing without them, and they'll never let us leave them. Meanwhile, all those lovely progressive allies keep telling us to give the relationship a chance. You were meant to be together. Unsurprisingly, some lesbians have come to the conclusion that they just need to get the L out of the LGBTQIA+ and organize separately as lesbians. Good luck with that. Every lesbian group and dating app is currently besieged by trans women claiming to be lesbians and demanding to be considered as valid sexual partners. Other lesbians, from the Gay Liberation Front of the 1970s and the original Stonewall, have set up the LGB Alliance, a charity to focus once again on the needs of homosexuals. Shamefully, Stonewall and others have tried to prevent this organization from even having charitable status. All of this might sound to you like just one grumpy old man moaning about a turf war between the different stripes of an ugly flag. But what began 25 years ago, with the erasure of the distinction between transvestites and transsexuals, and the addition of a fourth letter to the LGB acronym, has delivered a whole catalogue of problems today, some with devastating consequences. Of perhaps minor importance, but intensely annoying, is the Stalinist rewriting of LGB history to center trans people, when in reality they were absent or only present on the margins. More seriously, the progressive view that while biology is real, gender stereotypes are mere social constructs has been upended. LGBTQIA+ ideology reverses this, discounting the importance of sex and placing gender identity on a pedestal. Dressing in the wrong color or playing with the wrong toy is now seen as diagnostic of a trans identity, and anyone who dares question this identity is liable to be accused of conversion therapy. The problems of trans women's unfair advantage in women's sport and the potential dangers of their presence as biological males in women's refugees, prisons, changing rooms and toilets are becoming glaringly apparent. The social contagion of rapid onset gender dysphoria among teen girls and the transing of effeminate boys and butch girls both deserve far more attention. They are a physical and mental health time bomb ready to explode. Decades of progress in women's rights, lesbian and gay rights, and even children's rights are being rolled back or placed in jeopardy. This is not the gay rights movement of old. It is time for a divorce. That's all for today on Manhood. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe buttons, and also click on the notification bell to be the first to know when I drop a new video. If you find value in my videos, you can show your support through PayPal or Cash App. The links are in the description. See you next time. Cheers.